Well, loyal theorists, this is it. This will be my final FNAF theory. And this time, I mean it.
Oh, look at the intro. Look at the intro. I want to make an intro like this. Wow. Look at the intro, bro. The intro's amazing.
Nearly at hand. The pieces are in place for you. You missed it last week. Look for the green, and remember everything I taught you. Remember, dates are important. Remember the time is running out.
Game Theory! Game Theory
Hello,
remaining.
Internet.
Let's go.
Welcome to Game Theory, the show that, by my count, has had no less than 10 final
twice?
FNAF theories. At this point, it's practically become its own meme, but this time, it's no joke. After 66 theories,
66?
3 live talkbacks, and 1 bangin' remix.
Exotic butters.
Make that 2 bangin' remixes. Today, I end my coverage of Five Nights at Freddy's. After this, there's only 1 final game theory, and then the curtain closes on my time as host, and Tom will have to step into the spotlight. Hope you're ready for the challenge there, Tom. Tom?
Toy Bunny, Easter Bunny, Chocolate Bunny, Melted Chocolate Bunny, Withered Bunny, Blackheart Bunny,
that's
Rockstar Bunny,
wild.
Glamrock Bunny,
Wild.
Sunken Toy Bunny, Bon
so
Bon,
wild.
Just Bon, System Error Bunny, Nightmare Bunny.
Oh, he's
Hold
getting
on.
them on a street.
How many toes does he have?
2, no, 3, 5?
Again. The first step of FNAF theorizing. Slowly losing your mind. I think he's gonna do just fine. You know, I did
wanna
consider
be
making
like
my
you, dude.
final theory about FNAF, but I actually have something really special planned for that one. So special, in fact, that we're gonna be doing a premiere for it on this channel next Saturday, March 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific.
I'm
We're gonna have
actually
some fun.
excited to
You
see
guys will be able to chat with me live as that video releases. And who knows, there might even be some secrets to find. And most importantly of all, I get to say my final goodbye and thank you to all of you for the last
Right here,
13
bro. You
years.
wanna be in our
So
hearts,
that's
bro.
next week, March 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Make sure you're subscribed so you're notified when that one goes live. Speaking of March 9th, just a quick reminder that that's also the final day of sales for my YouTubes.
Okay,
Once I
for the
retire
YouTubes,
as host on the 9th of March, it too
I
will
really can't
retire
get the
and be
YouTubes
gone
right now
forever.
'cause,
So if you do want this
I'm
little
like a
piece of
minor,
game theory
so I
history,
can't
or
really
you know,
get
your
it
own little
right now. So,
psychic friend of
I'm gonna
Fred
see if I
Bear,
can
head on
get it
over to
from,
YouTubes.com or
like the
click the
second
link in the
market.
description to grab your MatPat figurine
You
and
know what I'm
FNAF
talking
pins
about.
before they're nothing but a distant memory. Kind of like Dream Theory, but enough housekeeping, it's time to talk about FNAF. And let me tell you, I've spent a
FNAF.
long time thinking about this one. How do you end
Nights
a
at Freddy's
series
Arcade
like
Room
this?
style.
Should I just do a normal theory about some minute detail? Doesn't really feel final, you know? Plus, I'd probably end up calling someone a robot, and then a bunch of people would get mad at me again. Should I redo the ultimate FNAF timeline as one final here's the lore? Well, that would certainly be big, but it also doesn't feel like that much was changed post-Ruin and Help Wanted 2 from what we did at the end of last year. So I didn't really want to be redundant either.
yeah.
You can see the struggle that I was facing, right? This episode, it's a big deal to me. It is literally the end of my legacy with FNAF. And you see, that's when it hit me. Legacy. Typically, FNAF theories are born out of the small details, but what if I took a step back and looked at the big picture? What if instead of counting animatronic toes or dead kids, I took a meta approach and just looked at the entire legacy of FNAF? I'm sure we're all familiar with the butterfly effect, right? The idea that a butterfly flapping its wings could cause the smallest of changes in the air, which could potentially lead to a tornado forming. Well, the term actually comes from the research of meteorologist Edward Lorenz, who, back in 1963, decided to round some numbers in his data. He condensed one variable from 0.506127 to just 0.506. And yet that tiny change right there completely threw off his computer's weather models, transforming sunny skies into violent storms, hence the whole tornado thing. This realization that small changes in data could yield such tremendously different results ultimately threw off science's entire understanding of nature. Before Lorenz, people thought that the universe could ultimately be predicted. Sir Isaac Newton back in 1687 famously believed in the clockwork universe, the idea that the parts of the universe worked like a machine, and that eventually, if you understood how the parts work, you could predict practically anything. French mathematician Pierre-Simon Laplace actually said basically the same thing. Eventually, we would get to a place where nothing would be uncertain. And yet, Lorenz showed us that one small change, one minor mistake or estimate or imprecise
The
measurement in a
editing on this
complex
video is
system could
just-
have a domino
wow.
effect at a massive scale, resulting in changes that you would never see coming. For example, in 1928, Alexander Fleming discovered that there was mold in his petri dish, but rather than just throwing it away or cleaning it up, he decided to study it, which then led to the discovery of penicillin, a life-saving antibiotic that could be used to treat meningitis, pneumonia, gonorrhea, syphilis, blood
Yeah, what does
poisoning, and
hip-hop
many
have to
others.
do
Or
with
if you
this?
want another example,
What
you
does
have the
hip-hop have to
explosion
do
of
with,
hip-hop music
FNAF?
largely owing its origins to a random lightning strike in New York City. In 1977, a bolt of lightning put the city of New York into a 25-hour blackout. So what do you do for all that time that you're stuck in the dark? You loot and pillage, baby. New Yorkers started to ransack storefronts, including music shops full of instruments instruments and supplies. Suddenly, expensive DJ equipment was in the hands of young aspiring musicians eager to experiment with hip-hop, which was a new genre of music just hitting the local scene. And thus, hip-hop was truly able to thrive. History is full of these sorts of stories, from the foundations of medicine and music to even stuff as extreme as the origins of both World War I and II. Why do I bring all this serious stuff up in relation to Spooky Bear Game? Because FNAF is one of those rounded variables. One decision by Scott Cawthon reshaped gaming and YouTube and the entire entertainment world as we know it. And that's not an exaggeration for effect. One man's decision to not give up, to try again in the face of rejection and adversity, literally shifted billions of dollars of the economy and affected hundreds of millions of lives in ways that are incalculable. And that is what I wanted to call attention to in my final FNAF theory. FNAF shows us that by not giving up, one person can have a profound effect on the course of history itself. I feel like the origin story of FNAF's been talked about to death, but just to set the stage here, despite hitting it big with FNAF in 2014, its creator Scott Cawthon had been making games at that point for 20 years, since 1994. And yet, even in those earliest days, you can tell that Scott had a fascination with creepy robots, working their designs into projects like the sci-fi Ifermoon and the religious Pilgrim's Progress. Even this incredibly rudimentary RPG Legacy of Flan has a final boss that has what looks to be the first appearance of what would eventually evolve into the Mangle. But despite producing a lot of games, none really ever caught the public's eye. And then came Chipper & Sons Lumber Company, where initial reviews, what few there were rough. And as the story goes, it was the reaction to James Stephanie Sterling that would change the course of Cawthon's career forever. Thank God for her.
It's just all over the place, and that thing looks like it's gonna kill your children. I imagine the phrase "kill me"
I'm sorry,
is
but like that's
stated
a girl.
over
That
and
sounds so
over
much like a
again in
boy.
the world of Chipper and Sons. Oh, they're robot beavers. That's not good. I think he's the only living thing in this world.
This repeated criticism, plus the lack of financial stability, brought Scott down to his lowest. Ready to quit games, he decided to try one final time and lean into the thing that had been leveled at him time and time again, the creepy robotic animations. And thus, Five Nights at Freddy's was born. And that right there, that's gonna act as our nexus point. The one flap of a butterfly wing. The decision to make a final game instead of just giving up. Now, let's see how it all maps out from there. Let's start with just the obvious downstream effects of this. That one game, over the course of the last decade, has spun off into 12. Which honestly, I've never truly sat down and processed. But believe it or not, there are 12 of these things, depending on how you count them. The entire franchise has sold 9.9 million copies on Steam alone, which in total has an estimated revenue of $94 million. And that's not even including the console and mobile ports or the number of microtransactions for FNAF AR, which itself had over 40 million downloads. It's also worth pointing out that of the $94 million, 55 million of that was just from Steam sales of Security Breach, because that one was actually at full price as opposed to all the others, which were either free or a couple of bucks. And while the first 4 FNAF games were entirely a one-man job, the rest have included voice actors, composers, entirely separate game studios like Steel Wool and Illumix. Even to this day, we're seeing this continue with studios like Megacat, who up until now have been focused on releasing games on retro consoles, a very niche market, but that made them perfect to create the retro-style pixelated FNAF game Into the Pit, releasing later this year. By pairing up with these smaller companies that aren't insanely well known, Scott's not only been able to make bigger, better games, he's also been able to use his single game success to put millions of eyeballs and millions of dollars into each of these companies. As a result of their work with FNAF, Illumix started working with Disney on features found throughout the parks. And if Steel Wool ever do release a game outside of FNAF in the future, you can bet that it's gonna have itself a fan base attached to it because people now know about them, and they're gonna wanna see what other work they can do. So that's on the game side, or at least it's on the official game side. But stopping there would be overlooking the much bigger impact FNAF has had on the games that haven't even been released yet. This one series inspired a whole new generation of game designers unlike any game that's ever really come before. All of them cutting their teeth on a genre that exploded in the mid-2010s, the FNAF fan game. Five Nights at Treasure Island, Five Nights at Wario's, Pop Goes, The Joy of Creation, Those Nights at Rachel's, Afton Built, The Glitched Attraction, Bloody Nights Juniors, Day Shift at Freddy's.
Thanks! What is this game?
I could go on and on and on for days. Some of these were just for the memes, others were more serious attempts at making games inspired by FNAF, and many of them were just taking the world that Scott had created and broadening it outward into the game that they wanted to see made. If you go on to Game Jolt, you'll find thousands of fan games, and I do mean thousands. If you search just for